Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, OnScreen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to OnScreen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be updating our MCU tier list. But before that, we got quite a few things coming up on the horizon and a few things to talk about that I've been playing and watching on tap. So let's get started with our On the Horizon segment.
On the horizon. On the horizon.
On the horizon, of course, where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. And we're starting with Sunday, March 12th on ABC is going to be the 95th Annual Academy Awards, which I'm probably just not even going to bother watching this time.
I'm not going to watch it. Nobody's getting slapped, so what's the point?
Yeah, well, that we know of.
I want... they got up the ante.
Yeah, I did slaps last time. Now it's decapitations.
No, yeah, like Ryan Reynolds needs to break a chair over Timothy Chalamet's face. Like, come on.
The violence
Timothy
must
Chalamet.
accelerate.
Yeah, the violence must, yeah, exactly.
Next up, also on Sunday, March 12th, but on MGM Plus, a streaming service I didn't know existed until just now, is A Spy Among Friends. It's a miniseries about the British Cold War espionage. So I guess that's a thing.
Okay.
Then we have Gotham Knights and Superman and Lois starting and returning respectively on Tuesday, March 14th on the CW.
Gotham Knights. Oh. Why has that been canceled?
They should have just put these out of their misery. I mean, they're not long for this world anyways.
Well, James Gunn and Peter Safran said Superman and Lois has maybe 2 or 3 more seasons left in it. They would not provide any comment over Gotham Knights when asked.
They had already filmed it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
Yeah.
there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
It was too late for the tax write-off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, too late for the tax write-off.
But those are both coming on Tuesday, March 14th for the CW. Then Legend of Heroes Tales of Azure is coming on Tuesday, March 14th to the PC, PS4, and Switch. This is, of course, the Legend of Heroes series, like Trails of the Sky and Trails of Cold Steel.
The Legends of Heroes series that goes all the way back to ancient Japanese PCs. So
from the feudal era.
Yeah.
The PCs were made out of carved wood blocks.
They were.
Then on Wednesday, March 15th, Ted Lasso is returning to Apple TV Plus. I still have never seen that series because I don't have Apple TV Plus.
Oh, well, you should get Apple TV Plus.
I don't want to pay Apple money. I'm going to have to when the Vince Gilligan series, the new one, comes out.
Oh, yeah,
so
for
I'll
sure.
wait till then. On Thursday, March 16th, Shadow and Bone returns for its second season on Netflix. It's a fun fantasy series that has kind of like most fantasy series kind of have like this European or like British kind of vibe to them. And Shadow and Bones is kind of based on like Russian stuff, so it's got kind of like a different flair to it.
Yeah.
Agent Elvis is coming to Netflix on Friday, March 17th. This is a cartoon with Matthew McConaughey playing Elvis as a secret agent. It also features the voices of Johnny Knoxville, Caitlin Olsen, Don Cheadle, Nicey Nash, Simon Pegg, Ed Harris, Chris Elliott, and even Priscilla Presley herself are going to be doing guest roles. Priscilla Presley voicing herself.
She's producing it.
Yeah, she's involved as a producer.
Yeah.
And this is being showrun by Archer writer Mark Arnold, so
Could be fun.
Archer's a funny show, so it should be good. And that is on Friday, March 17th on Netflix. Also on Friday, March 17th, but on Hulu, is Boston Strangler. It's a true crime movie about the Boston Strangler. As we're approaching, since it's St. Patrick's Day, gotta have something set in Boston.
Kevin Feige confirms the Boston Strangler will return return in The Boston Strangler on Hulu. Source Kevin Feige.
Extrapolations, which is a climate change anthology, is coming to Apple TV Plus on Friday, March 17th. Swarm, which is a horror dramedy series from Donald Glover and Janine Navers, who wrote on Watchmen, is coming on Friday, March 17th to Amazon Prime. Bayonetta Origins, Syriza and the Lost Demon is coming on Friday, March 17th to the Nintendo Switch. And Shazam! Fury of the Gods is also coming on Friday, March 17th in theaters. And that's what's coming up on the horizon. Quite a list.
Yeah, interesting list of things.
Now that moves us on to our next segment, which is On Tap.
What we've been watching. What we've been playing. What's on tap?
On Tap is where we talk about stuff we've been watching and playing, but not in full spoilers, because we have a segment called Full Spoilers, and that's where we talk about stuff in full spoilers. So on Tap this week, I'm going to be talking about a few things I've been watching and playing, just some recommendations to make for the most part. I've been playing Octopath Traveler 2. It's good. I think it's mostly better than Octopath Traveler 1 in pretty much every way. Definitely the graphics are a lot better. The style was already really cool, but they've been developing what they can do with that style with each new HD 2D game they've put out, with like Live Alive and Triangle Strategy. They've been like trying new things, and so they've got a lot more like 3D stuff going on, but that still looks 2D. There's like little subtle things, like the way you enter battles, like just feels kind of really satisfying and not disruptive. If you're used to games with like random encounters with enemies, like you always have almost that like heart attack moment when the screen suddenly like freaks out and you're like, oh shit, I'm going into a random battle. It's like, well, this kind of feels like a really soothing version instead, where it kind of like just sways to the side and it's like, oh, okay, I'm going into a battle now.
Yeah.
So there's little kind of cool touches, like things that are kind of thought out like that. And I really liked Octopath Traveler. I know it's kind of a mixed bag. Like some people really did not like it. They just like, a lot of people like the art style, but didn't like the game itself. I really like it. I'm still early in, but I'm enjoying it quite a bit. So that's what I have to say about that. Lockwood & Co. I've been watching that. I finished the first season, which is all that's out for it so far. And it was pretty good. My one complaint I'll say is that it feels like kind of divided in a similar way to like how Sandman, kind of like the first half of Sandman felt different than the second half. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like there was a quality difference. Like the first half was better than the second half, you know?
Right, yeah.
I feel the same thing with Lockwood & Co., where like the first half of the season feels a lot better developed than the second half. When they go into the second half, like just kind of the stakes, like they're supposed to be higher, but it feels like it wasn't developed well enough. Like the villain and the things going on weren't developed well enough to really make them work. Like I can see what they're going for, it just isn't working for me.
Right, yeah.
But the first half of the season is really entertaining and interesting. And what I really like about the show is it's modern. Like if you've watched the clip that was first released for it, you probably think like, oh, it's set in like Victorian London or something. It takes place kind of like in modern times, but it has like a very Victorian era vibe to it, especially with like child labor and like just the way children are treated, like they're expendable kind of thing. Like it just kind of really reminds me of like content about that era, about like Victorian, even though it's modern, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Next up, I finally started watching The White Lotus. I finished the first season. There are 2 seasons out, but I've been meaning to get around to it, and I finally did. It's a very entertaining show with some just kind of random shocking content at times where it's like, oh my god, I can't believe that's on the show. A lot of it having to do with like sexuality and stuff. That's kind of like surprising. But it's a pretty good show with a lot of hateable characters. It's a lot of rich people that you really don't like, you know? And then a few people that you either feel sorry for or that you do like. It's a pretty interesting show, the way it's put together. So very character focused. There's like, it kind of sets up in the first episode, like that there's a character that dies and you know somebody's going to die in this thing. And so you're kind of puts you into the headspace of like a murder mystery almost. And that's not what the show is at all. Like literally the death happens in like the last episode. So it's like nothing, it has nothing to do with like anything else going on until the very end, you know?
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay.
if you're watching it and you're like, oh, this is a murder mystery, when you find that part out, just kind of put that out of your head. 'Cause it really isn't.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not about that.
Psych.
And then I just started the first episode, which is all that's out so far, of History of the World Part 2. This is from Mel Brooks. This is his sequel to his movie, but it's a TV series.
Yeah, it's a TV series. I don't know how much of it, because I heard Mel Brooks is like the producer, obviously.
He narrates it, and he, is kind of in it.
Right.
Like, not to spoil, one of the jokes, I guess, but he's kind of in it in a jokey way, but he narrates the whole thing.
Right, yeah. It's got some other people in it, too.
Yeah, it's got quite a few big names. Wanda Sykes, Seth Rogen, Camille Nanjiani are some of the ones that I've picked out for sure. A few other, kind of comedic actors that you've seen probably in a lot of things, but might not know the names of. At least I didn't. It's got a few jokes that hit, but it's kind of, I don't know. It's a little, too silly and not, funny enough. I don't know if that makes sense, but...
Yeah, I was looking at the executive producers on this. It's being produced by Mel Brooks, Wanda Sykes, Nick Kroll, Ike Barinholtz, David Stassen, Kevin Salter, and Christy Smith, all listed as executive producers.
Nick Kroll's in it too. He's a performer in it. Yeah, I mean it's okay.
I saw the trailer for Hulu. It looked like epic movie, like those really bad parody movies that they start producing.
It's not that bad.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty hard to actually be that bad.
And it's not strung together trying to do a narrative either. It's just sketches.
Is it similar in structure to the first movie?
I don't even remember the first movie. I know I watched it, but I just barely remember it. It was so long ago.
Yeah, it was ages ago. It was in the 90s. It was on TV. That's how I watched it.
It's just sketches. It just kind of goes from one sketch to another, and the narration sets up each sketch.
Yeah.
And each sketch is it doesn't resolve. You might have thought oh, since it's a TV series, each episode will be its own kind of story. It's not that at all. There's I don't know, 8 sketches in the first episode, and they're all completely unrelated. They're all completely different parts of time, and there's one about the Kama Sutra, and there's one about Hitler as an ice skater being judged by the world.
Well, was
kind of a little funny. I heard that was a repeat.
That's a callback to the film, because the biggest gag and what's funny about this existing was the first film ended with a teaser for History of the World Part 2, which was a movie Mel Brooks never intended to make. So the whole idea of there being a History of the World Part 2 was just a big joke, a big sketch for the end of the film.
Kind of in Spaceballs. He did that in Spaceballs.
Yeah, he did in Spaceballs, yeah. Yeah, so it's a big sketch, and part of that sketch was about teasing the segments that were going to be in the second movie, and one of them was Hitler on ice. So I guess they actually did that.
Yeah, so they did that, and it's a little funny, and there's a pretty funny one about Abraham Lincoln where they're just making jokes about him being too tall most of the time. He's constantly hitting his head and stuff. It's kind of overly silly comedy, which kind of isn't really in vogue right now, I guess. It's okay. I
was just talking it's funny because Mel Brooks is one of the godfathers of parody films.
Mm-hmm.
And I was speaking to a friend the other night, and the subject came up about, I think we were talking about the new Scream, and then that evolved into a conversation about Scary Movie, and then the realization that the parody film genre kind of died. There hasn't been anything.
Yeah, it was, you mentioned movies like Epic Movie and stuff, that's what killed it.
Yes, they were so bad. It killed it, yeah.
It was just to the point that they were just ripping off the movies, but really badly, instead of actually making parodies.
Not even that. It was just reference. It was just random
pop culture references.
Together references that are supposed to be jokes because lol, random reference to something popular.
Yeah.
Lol, they're in 300, but look, it's Harry Potter and he gets kicked into the pit. I don't know if that was an actual joke in the movie, but that's the style of humor it went for.
Yeah.
And it was it's not really a joke.
Or they just be making references to fucking Facebook shit and stuff. I don't know. It was bad. It was really bad.
Yeah, it was really bad.
It was a national disgrace. The next thing, and I watched this a while ago, but I never really got to talk about it on the show, was similar to History of the World, except it's kind of done more in a Borat style, and that is Kunk on Earth. which is from producer Charlie Brooker, who did Black Mirror and Touch of Cloth, which we covered both of those. We've done Black Mirror a number of times, and we also did A Touch of Cloth.
A Touch of Cloth was hilarious. Speaking of parody films and parody, it's appropriate to go from a discussion of history of World War II to A Touch of Cloth, because cut from the same cloth, isn't it?
Yeah, that you're touching. Yeah.
Yes.
But Punk on Earth is kind of like done in a Borat style, except it's not really a gotcha. Where like Borat is a gotcha movie, like where
Oh yeah. Borat's whole thing is he's going to these people, these politicians and stuff, mostly conservative, pretending to be like interested in them or like even aligned with their beliefs in order to trick them in some way to exposing themselves.
Yeah. So Punk on Earth is not that, but it's like it in the sense that there is an actress and comedian who is portraying the role of Punk, who is the main character in this. And that character is doing like a news report where she's interviewing academics about things about the history of the world, about like Shakespeare or about, you know, a modern civilization and just different aspects of the world. And she's interviewing all these real academics who don't know that she's a character and not like a real person. And so when she says something really stupid or ridiculous, they're kind of like throwing off their game, and it's funny to watch, but they're not exposing these people or something. It's just about their reaction to like, what the fuck's going on kind of thing, you know? And it's really, really funny. As I said, this is from Charlie Brooker, and he did A Touch of Cloth. And if you've watched A Touch of Cloth, one of the things you'll know is that it's one of those things where there's so many jokes densely packed that you'll start uproariously laughing at something that's really funny, and because you're laughing, you'll miss like 4 more jokes. Because it's so fast that you can watch it like multiple times and go, I completely missed these jokes because I was laughing so hard at another joke. It's like that. We're just so densely packed with jokes, and there's callbacks, and there's all sorts of just really funny things going on in the series, and it's just about this female reporter interviewing these academics about the Industrial Revolution or aspects of modern history, of like human history. And it's incredibly funny. I'd highly recommend anybody watch it. And I placed it directly after History of the World Part 2 for a reason, because they're both kind of doing the same thing in different ways. Like History of the World is making sketch comedy out of history, and Punk on Earth is making a documentary style thing of history, but it's a parody.
Yeah.
And of those two, Punk on Earth is way better than History of the World Part 2. That's what I'll say.
I'm going to say not surprised.
Yeah, not surprising. And then lastly, for our On Tap segment, I just recently got to watch Cocaine Bear.
Oh, okay, yes. What did you think?
So, Cocaine Bear, if for anybody who doesn't know, is based on the true story about a bear who does cocaine. The true story is just sad because the bear just does cocaine and dies of an overdose. And that's it. That's the story.
Yeah, that's what actually happens when you consume a large amount of cocaine at once. You die.
Yeah. In the movie, it's kind of done more like a modern creature feature. So like a Sharknado kind of movie or something, where you just have like this bear high on cocaine, ravaging, just killing people, and you have all these other character plots going on, revolving mostly around the cocaine. You know, like, so you have like the person trying to retrieve this cocaine, you have a police officer trying to track them down, you have like a park ranger has to go in because something's going on there. There's a girl who's like skipping school with her friend because she wants to like spray paint like a waterfall or something, like graffiti on it, and she gets caught up in it. There's all these different kind of stories of these different people going on that just get caught up in this force of nature, which is a bear on cocaine.
This is rampaging cocaine bear.
Yeah, and it is like a very gory but very fun creature feature in that vein. So just bears ripping people apart and causing horrible deaths for these characters.
Looks like a blast. I'm gonna say that. It looks amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. I think it's one of those movies it's better than it has any right being. This shouldn't be as good as it is. Well, like, it should just be a stupid, funny, you know, fucked up creature movie, but there's actually like some cinematic flair going on. There's actually like a couple sequences that are actually really well put together and stuff that's like kind of, you didn't have to do this. Cocaine Bear, you did not have to go this hard. You could have just had a bear ripping people up, and people would have been satisfied with that. But instead, said, you actually made interesting characters that are kind of funny to watch, interacting with each other in kind of funny ways. There's just more going on than needs to be done. You didn't need to have this much going on, you know? But they did, and it works out really well. So I'd highly recommend it to anybody that was even remotely interested in it based on the trailers and the concept and stuff. It delivers exactly what you want from it and more, is what I'll say.
Nice. Sounds good.
Yep. So that's Cocaine Bear. And then that takes us to our final segment of our podcast, which is Tier Time.
It's that time again. Tier Time. Best of Tier Time.
So what we're going to be doing this week is we're going to be ranking or placing MCU movies into a tier list. We did this before, but we're going to kind of check up, see if any of our thoughts have changed on this, and then we have movies that we need to add in that have come out since the last time we did that, and these will catch us up through Phase 4. And then the next time we do Tier Time, we'll do it at the end of Phase 5. Or the next time we do MCU Tier Time, I should say. We'll do other
So I'm looking at this. So I was trying to remember where we stopped off at. Looks like we got through 2021 of the MCU.
We got about halfway through Phase 4.
Yes. So basically, the new ones we're adding are all from last year.
Yeah, I believe so. I think, just to go over real quick, the movies that we have not added are Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Ms. Marvel, Thor Love and Thunder, She-Hulk, Werewolf by Night, Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, and Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So that's what we're adding, but we're also going to go over what we already placed and see if there's anything we want to rearrange given hindsight.
Okay.
So I'm going to start off going through our current tier list, and what I'll do is I'll go through one tier at a time, and when I finish reading out what's in that tier, we'll decide if any of the movies in that we feel like should be moved.
I think S tier that's not going to change.
Yeah. So S tier is Captain America the Winter Soldier and Avengers Infinity War. I don't think I want to move any of those out of that.
Yeah, those are great. Nothing in Phase 4, I'm telling you right now, is S tier. I know that just right off the bat.
There's a few arguments that could be made. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not seeing what's going to be S tier for me.
I probably would. I don't think. I think some of them would probably go more like high A tier, probably.
Yeah, A tier, sure, but S tier, no.
Yeah. Okay. So here's A tier, which represents movies that are great, whereas S tier is masterpiece. Starts out Captain America: The First Avenger. The Avengers. Guardians of the Galaxy. Captain America: Civil War.
Yes.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Absolutely.
Thor Ragnarok.
That was the best Thor movie.
Yeah. Avengers Endgame.
Yep.
WandaVision.
Yes.
Loki Season 1.
Think Loki is the best of the Marvel TV series. WandaVision is up there too.
I think WandaVision's the best.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no reason to split hairs. They're both in the A tier. I think they both deserve it.
Yeah. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which I think personally to me is probably my favorite of the Phase 4 movies.
It's one of the best of the Phase 4. That and Spider-Man No Way Home, which is listed next. But I think those were the cream of the films in Phase 4.
I think both of those are debatable for S tier, but I wouldn't quite place them. I think Shang-Chi, action-wise, is probably the best action movie in the MCU.
I could put No Way Home in S tier, but I don't think you agree with that, so.
It's very high A tier for me. I don't know if I could put it in S tier. I really liked it, but it kind of felt more like an experience than a movie. I don't know. It felt very like an event rather than a story.
Here's my argument. It is a story, and yes, and it's also an event. And what makes this remarkable is the inclusion of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire and the other actors from their respective films. That could have been really gimmicky and oh hey, but the way they did it, they actually made it meaningful. They actually crafted a story that made it meaningful for them to be there outside of just being a stunt.
Yeah.
And after watching, I know it's a low bar, but after watching the Arrowverse crossovers, which they could hype it up and people just show up for 5-second gimmicky cameos.
There's Burt Ward.
Yeah, there's Burt Ward. Oh, there's the actor from Smallville.
There's
Clark
Lucifer
Kent.
from the Lucifer.
Yeah, he's just in one scene. This doesn't do that. It's all the better for it. It also represents a pivotal point in Peter Parker's arc for the movies, because he gets the thing that happens. Aunt May dies, and, and when I talk about the reason that's significant is because it's never been confirmed that this version of Spider-Man had an Uncle Ben. And in fact, it's like low-key deconfirmed that he did, because when Tobey Maguire's talking about it, it's not ringing any bells for MCU Peter Parker, he's not relating. And it's kind of odd, but when you think about it, like, oh shit, maybe this is the first time this is happening to him, that elevates it.
When you say that it does it, but it's meaningful, it's not just like a gimmick, I think it's still largely a gimmick. I think there are a few moments, including the Aunt May scene of which you're talking about, that do feel like an actual true story going on, but a lot of it just feels like an excuse. It's a movie written around making these appearances happening rather than the appearances happening because they're necessary for the story.
It is a gimmick. It is a gimmick in that, but it transcends, it makes full use of that narratively to the point where it works. It's satisfying. It's what you want it as a viewer to be, when so often these things end up just being unsatisfying cameos.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it really did enough for me to push it past there.
Okay.
If you really want to, I can put it up above there, but I think it's still, I walked out of the movie feeling like it was a gimmick. It was a fun, entertaining gimmick. It had some heartfelt moments that were good, but it was still a gimmick.
I think to move into S tier, we both have to agree. And it's clear we don't. That's fine. It could stay in A tier then.
And we have one last thing in A tier, which is Moon Knight. Anything else that you're thinking about changing there? Pushing up or down?
I'd like Moon Knight enough, but I think, in retrospect, I'd bump it down to B tier.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Everything else seems to be good for me.
Yeah, everything else works. That A tier works.
Let's move on to B tier, which is good. And first thing up is Moon Knight.
Yes, which we just moved, so...
I think we should move that again.
So, I mean, again, I liked it well enough. I liked the lead. I thought, it was funny, but it did have, a lot of flaws that keeps it from being great.
I think it had a lot of kind of surprises in it that were fun, and I think those kind of blinded us a little bit. It made it feel better than it was. And
also,
then in retrospect, it's kind of
also, I think when we made this list, it was still really new.
Yeah,
and so there was a newness.
Still been airing. I think it might not have even finished by that point.
Maybe. I forget exactly when we did the podcast, the last one. But, I mean, looking at the dates on here, that's 2022. It's literally the most recent thing on the list.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think there was probably a recency bias when we did this.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of agree. And I think, like I said, the show had a lot of kind of fun surprises and little kind of cool tricks to it. And I think those kind of blinded us a little bit to the actual overall quality being not quite as good as we thought it was. It's still a good series.
It's a good series. It's not Loki. It's not WandaVision. It doesn't reach those heights.
Exactly. Next up, we have the original Iron Man, the movie that started it all.
Oh yeah. Great movie. Had a lot of fun with Iron Man.
I think it's dated when you watch the MCU movies now.
Yeah.
I think the MCU movies have evolved a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely evolved. Iron Man
especially in phase 3.
I mean, Iron Man is a pretty basic movie, but also kind of set the template for the formula that they would follow through the rest of the movies, which is keep it action-packed, keep it mostly faithful to the source material.
Keep some levity.
And inject a healthy dose of levity with a snarky protagonist.
And great casting being a huge part of the MCU,
Yeah. It's got that formula down. It's a movie you could easily go back to, but you're right, it's been surpassed because Iron Man at the end of the day, it's a very basic film. And so when I compare it to something that we put in the A tier stuff is all doing something more interesting. It's elevating that formula.
Yeah, very much so. I think if we put it anywhere above B tier, it would be more out of respect for it being the original than its actual quality.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So next up we have Avengers Age of Ultron. This is a movie that I think when it first came out was a lot less liked, and they actually kind of did some work.
This is kind of
the last tier of retroactively making it better.
It's weird because this was my first first time feeling sort of disappointed by a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And I'd say that not like I walked out like I hate it. Like I was like, oh, that's terrible. But I was just kind of like, I walked out of the theater. I was kind of thinking that wasn't as exciting as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
I couldn't put my finger on it, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. The movie overall just seemed okay.
I think they retroactively improved it though. Like by what happens in other movies that connect to Age of Ultron, it has improved Age of Ultron when you go back to it. I think it's one of the only ones where that's really happened. Where like when you go back to it and like it more than you did before. The other movie that has had that happen to it is still not that great of a movie. It's much lower in the tier list, but it was improved gradually. And I think there's only 2 movies that that's happened with.
Yeah, Avengers Age of Ultron. It's like, Ultron was a fun villain. It did introduce us to Wanda and to Quicksilver, but they just kill him off in the same movie. I'm gonna be honest, I think it's pointless to introduce a character like Quicksilver, who is a major character from the comics, and then just immediately killed him off. It's like, okay, with the first Avengers, I could deal with you killing off Coulson. He's a minor character. He's made a few appearances. But, I mean, people want to see the MCU Quicksilver, and then you just kill him right away. What the fuck? And Joss Whedon's a terrible person anyway, so. But, yeah, it's like...
That's not why he's a terrible person, but he's
No, it's not. Yeah, I just say that because I'm like, that's like the worst thing the movie did. And I think at the time, also like with the dialogue, it like ratcheted up like the quippiness of like everybody to a point where it was like, you just started to groan at the dialogue. People complained about Marvel dialogue. I mean, well, Age of Ultron did start it, obviously, but like it ratcheted up to a level where it started to become obnoxious.
Next up we have the original Ant-Man.
Also a fun movie. It's a heist movie. I like Paul Rudd.
The saddest story about Ant-Man is that we could have had something much better.
Oh,
maybe.
Edgar Wright was supposed to originally direct, and then creative differences happened, which happens a lot with Marvel films.
Because I think the problem is that a lot of people that get involved, they think, oh, I'm going to do an Ant-Man movie, and they think of it just as a movie. Like, okay, I'm going to have my control and do this. But what the truth of the matter is, and I've said this before, the way to look at the MCU as a whole is that it's a big TV series over multiple mediums.
Yes.
And you can't just have like a movie do whatever the fuck it wants, because it will disrupt it will disrupt what's going on with the other things, you know?
Yeah,
so in this case, if you let somebody just take complete control of it, well then how does the other elements fit into the MCU now? You know, that becomes a creative issue.
It's a balance because it has to be self-contained to an extent. Like Ant-Man is almost entirely a self-contained film, but there's also the concern with, okay, well, we're going to use this character in other movies, and theoretically, like, the events of every other movie happened in this universe. Like, we gotta be mindful of that.
I mean, there's a reason why the first MCU movie that really blew everybody away was the original Avengers, which was done by Joss Whedon, a TV showrunner. And the reason why the directors that were most prolific in the MCU were the Russos, who directed on TV.
Yeah.
So these are people that are used to the kind of format of like a bigger picture thing. And the directors that they've had more issues with creative differences and stuff are ones that primarily worked in individual movies that were unrelated to an existing franchise.
Yeah.
It makes it like a learning curve, I think, for the movies. But I think Ant-Man fits well in B tier.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely.
Next up we have Doctor Strange, also in B tier. That to me is like a very high B tier. I think it's pretty formulaic structurally.
Yes,
but it's a very entertaining movie.
Yes. It's entertaining because again, it's got a great lead. Actually, that's like 90% of it. It's like a Benedict Cumberbatch.
I think it's the lead, and it's just magic. Magic is fun, you know.
Yeah.
And they did magic well. Like they had a fun way of working with magic. A lot of the visuals are really cool too.
I did like the final showdown.
That was clever.
That was clever and unique.
Kind of like a mini Groundhog's Day in the middle of the movie.
In the middle of the movie, yeah. And it wasn't just like another big superhero battle. It was something different.
A battle of wits.
Yes.
I like that. To me, that's very high B tier. It's like, I'd almost argue that maybe would go into A tier, but I'm not so determined to fight that.
I just want, I watched it, I was like, yeah, they're doing the formula.
They're doing the formula, but it's really good. Next up, we have Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, Yes.
I love this, and I
really
remember the impact of like how well they did the reveal of the Vulture being the father of Peter's crush.
Right.
And that moment, like the theater literally gasped when he opened the door, you know? like how they'd already set up a good villain, largely because Michael Keaton's amazing. And he really commits and does a great job in that role. But then you've already got him sold, and then you tie him in even further, and it was such a great move. Again, like Doctor Strange, this is one that I could argue should be A tier, but I'm not so convinced that I'd fight over it.
No, I mean, I agree. This actually should be A tier. I don't know why we put it in B. I'm gonna be honest.
Let's move that up to A tier then.
People think I'm weird because, like, I do still think Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is a better movie.
I do too. But it's not there's a difference between that and like an MCU movie and like what they need to be, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. No, I get that. But I would say Homecoming's probably like, well, after No Way Home, it's like my third favorite Spider-Man movie. No Way Home is better. But again, they literally knocked out of the park with that, but Homecoming's great as well.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have Black Panther, which I know for a lot of people would probably be S tier. I just didn't think it was that good. I liked it. I liked what it did for representation. I liked that they gave Wakanda such a style.
To me, it's similar to Doctor Strange, where, like, it's cool that they introduced us to Black Panther and they introduced us to, like, a whole new part of the MCU. But again, it does what Doctor Strange did, where it follows the formula.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's an entertaining movie. They had a very charismatic lead, which sadly he passed away, and I think it's great. But again, like, I just don't think it took, like, big enough swings or to try to differentiate itself from, like, other Marvel movies, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And it's also, I think, the first MCU movie where, like, the special effects started to fall apart a little.
Mm-hmm.
Which was really distracting because it was in, like, the major final fight between T'Challa and Killmonger is where that happened, and it just looked like a fucking PS2 game, like, all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah.
It was just really bad and distracting. I think that was pretty bad.
Yeah, but giving what we know now about, like, how Marvel treats its VFX teams and stuff and how they're on a rush schedule, I think that makes sense now in retrospect.
Yeah, but that's, I think, the first one we started to see the cracks of that, I think.
Yeah.
I think Black Panther's good in B tier.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Next up, we have Captain Marvel. I might push this lower.
Really? Okay, so what's your issues with Captain Marvel? To me, I feel like it's the same thing as Doctor Strange and Black Panther, where, like,
it's just following the formula.
Yeah, it's formulaic, but it's very competent. They have a great lead. They got a fun plot. The Skrulls are a great villain.
I like the Skrull twist.
Yeah.
That they weren't the villain, that it was like the Kree that were the villains, kind of, and I like that twist. I like the Skrulls being set up for more in the MCU as well. I think my issue with Captain Marvel, and I'm not like an anti-woker, but it's just, it's very like, it's not that it's woke even, it's just, it's so like, it's pushing like a kind of agenda, and it's not that the agenda itself annoys me, it's that it's so transparent in the way that it's doing it that annoys me.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just feels like they're putting it together with blocks, and they're saying, okay, female empowerment block 1, okay, and now we need to make sure there's another female empowerment block, and it just kind of, it feels like it didn't need to be pushed that hard, like it was already doing that, like it was already, you already have like the most powerful Marvel character basically at that point. You already like have like a fun movie set in the 90s. You already have like great chemistry between Samuel Jackson and Brie Larson setting it up. You already had like a cool twist. It didn't need to be so forced, I think. Like I think it already achieved its goals before it was forced.
Right.
But I'm fine with leaving it in B if you want to leave it in B.
If you want to move it to C, I'm fine with that. I'm not super attached to the movie, but I mean, I think B is fine for it.
Let's just leave it in B.
Okay.
Next up, we have Spider-Man Far From Home. I know last time when we talked about this, there was a difference of opinion between us about which was the better Spider-Man movie, and I was saying I preferred Homecoming, and you preferred Far From Home. I think that's why they both ended up in B tier, because...
Yeah. I think I've changed my opinion on that since we did this, because, like, I do like Mysterio. He's he's a fun villain. It has like a lot of great set pieces.
Yeah.
But
kind of the dream kind of sequence where Mysterio is like really fucking with Peter's head was...
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Was a brilliant moment.
But I think I like Michael Keaton's Vulture better. And I think, after thinking about it, I think Homecoming is more of a well-rounded film.
It felt more grounded. It felt more real. The characters felt like they were more in their places, like in a way that made sense.
Yeah. Far From Home's fun. I think retrospectively, I think it's the weakest of the trilogy so far.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So you're cool with B tier for that?
Yeah, it's a solid B tier.
And to round out B tier, we have The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was, I don't know, like, there's things I liked about it, but a lot of it was a slog. A lot of it,
I don't know, like, I still like it than, like, most of the rest of the MCU TV series.
A lot of them started having problems, but there were, like, points where Falcon and the Winter Soldier were just getting boring.
I really like how they handled U.S. Agent in this. I think they went really good. They could have gone the route of, like, fully making him a villain and just demonizing him, but, like, they actually made him, like, a more nuanced character than I expected them to do.
Yeah.
It's a point where, like, yeah, he's got rough edges and he can go off the rails, but, like, he is genuinely trying to do good and, like, genuinely wants to be a hero. He's not trying to be the bad guy, you know?
Yeah, but, I mean, I think everything was done well in it. I think maybe it just needed less episodes.
Yeah.
It just kind of felt, like, boring at times. If I look back at the structure of it, if I look back at, like, the key points, I like them all. It just feels like there were points in this where I was just getting really bored watching. Like, there were points where it just became a slog, you know? Like, it was just, okay, yeah, come on, move on, you know, let's get going.
Right,
and then there were a few things that I didn't like. Like, I really didn't like the way they handled Sharon Carter.
Yeah, Sharon Carter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really did not like the way they handled her.
Oh, the secret reveal that she's the villain.
Yeah, it just kind of felt, I don't know, it didn't work for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It didn't work for that didn't work for me either. That was
her character really progression, it didn't make sense with it, you know?
Yeah, it was a leap.
Yeah, so I mean that bothered me. That was such a small part of the show, but that bothered me a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think B might be a good place for it, but I'd go down to C if you wanted to.
We could go down to C on that. That's fine.
Yeah, let's drop that down into C. When I'm looking at C, what we have in there, I think it kind of makes sense. It kind of fits with that.
Yeah, it kind of fits. Yeah, I agree. What else we got? See, we got the original Thor, which was fine. It was pretty.
Thor was entertaining. It was fun. I think it did a good job of like presenting Thor as both like a credible hero, but also funny in like this kind of bombastic way that like they've done better with like Thor Ragnarok, you know, but and in like the Avengers movies, they did a better job with Thor as well. But I think they did a pretty good job setting him up. And like I remember when Thor was coming out, I was like, why are they casting Chris Hemsworth? This doesn't make sense, you know, like I remember Alexander Skarsgård was up for the running, and I was like, he really makes sense. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, so glad they cast Hemsworth.
I want to know what you were thinking when you thought like Chris Hemsworth was not perfect for like a big blonde-haired muscle like superhero guy.
I think it was largely because, and first off, he wasn't as big in the first Thor movie or when they announced him, you know?
True. He bulked up quite a bit, I guess.
I think that's part of it, but I think a lot of it was just that, you know, they were talking about like some of the people they were looking into before Hemsworth, like that was being reported on were like Alexander Skarsgård, who I thought at the time was like really good for Thor. And now looking back, I think Hemsworth was 100% the right choice.
At least they didn't go with Wizard Magazine's choice for Thor back in like 1995 or whatever.
Who, Arnold Schwarzenegger or something?
Fabio,
Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus, it's just like casting superheroes based on their hair.
Yeah. Oh yeah, casting resemblance and crap. Yeah, their casting call articles were never like 100% serious or based off of anybody's acting ability.
Yeah, I think Thor kind of proved me wrong on Hemsworth though. Like when I talk about that I was unsure about Hemsworth, that was before seeing it, not after. Like,
and he's only gotten better in the role since.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's like found his place. I think Thor fits in C.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. It's probably out of like the original set of pre-Avengers movies, it's probably my second least favorite.
Yeah, we'll get to next tier. We'll get to the least favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Thor is enjoyable, but it's not great. It's average, which is what C tier is. Next up, we have Iron Man 3, which there's an aspect to Iron Man 3 that I really, really like. But then for the most part, it just kind of feels like maybe the most skippable of the MCU movies. Like you could just skip Iron Man 3 and probably not even notice the difference.
Yeah, probably. I gotta say, Iron Man has like the worst set of solo movies of anybody in the MCU.
Yeah. It's that whole House thing where like House isn't a great show, but it's a great character.
Yes. It's like, Tony Stark, Iron Man is a great character, but his movies kind of stink.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing I really dig about Iron Man 3 though is that it followed up the Avengers. It was the first movie to follow up the Avengers. And I've always had a thing where like movies with movie sequels, they kept having to get bigger and bigger. And I always used to say, when you follow up something that's like really huge, you can't really just go bigger every time. Like sometimes you have to like recalculate.
You have to go smaller.
And the way you do that is you make it more personal, you make it more like emotional, you kind of focus in more on the characters than on the big epic event or something. And I think that's exactly what Iron Man 3 did, which I think as much as I say that it's the most skippable movie in the entire MCU, it did the right thing for following up the Avengers. It was the right move. I just don't know if we needed to have an Iron Man movie at all following up Avengers. Like we could have done an Iron Man movie later that was more relevant. But I don't know. Like I think C is a good place for it because like I said, I think it's a good movie. I think it's entertaining. I think it did the right thing following up the Avengers. It's just also completely skippable in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
So keeping that in C?
Yeah, I don't see a reason to move it.
Next up is Eternals, which when that came out, people were saying this is the worst Marvel movie. This is complete trash.
I don't think it's the worst. I mean, I'm not like a super fan of the Eternals film, obviously. Like, it says much in the past, but yeah, I don't think it's the worst MCU film. It never was.
I think it's just too rushed. There's too much rushed. Going on.
Yes. It comes at the expense of the characters. They introduced like this big cast of new characters for the first time and don't really like give you a chance to get to know them. One of them's dead like at the beginning of the movie, and it's just clearly this huge emotional moment, but you're just like, okay, I barely knew that character.
Yeah,
like,
this is one of the things where like
did basically nothing for the entire like time of the movie up to this point.
They should have done this as like a 1-2 punch. They should have done it as like a Disney Plus series and then a movie. And the Disney Plus series should have been like an anthology series where each episode focused on one of the Eternals.
Yeah.
And like it wouldn't even have to be like the big plot set at once. It could just be some random moment in their really long lives on this thing as like a way for us to get to know those characters. And then the movie starts and you get like the bigger epic story and then you're attached to the characters already. I think like that would have really worked for something like the Eternals. I think the big problem is there's just too many new characters, concepts that are just massive, and you have all of that together and it's too much. Like you needed to build to that. You couldn't just do that all at once. This also, I think Eternals is hurt in retrospect in the same way that like Age of Ultron is helped in retrospect, where like based on other movies that came after, Age of Ultron's kind of elevated a little bit from where it was because like its parts have become more relevant in the MCU as it progressed. I think it's the opposite with the Eternals. It's almost like they kind of de-emphasize the events of the Eternals in the rest of Phase 4. Eternals happened, and then they're kind of like, man, all this huge crazy shit happened. Let's just forget all of that now. It's like it didn't even exist, Which makes it, at this point, a lot like Iron Man 3 in the sense that it feels almost skippable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because, like, it doesn't really have anything to do with the MCU, which is fine.
Well, it's kind of crazy that it doesn't have anything to do with the MCU, considering such huge, monumental events happened in it. And it still has nothing to do with the MCU.
Yeah, that's true. There's literally the corpse of, like, a dead Celestial in the middle of the world, and, like, literally nobody's made reference to that.
Exactly.
Since. It's like it didn't happen. Yeah. And also, like, I don't know how Marvel feels about the performance of the movie. I noticed that despite them teasing a sequel at the end of it, a sequel to Eternals is not currently on the announced roadmap that goes for, like, several years out right now. It's not currently part of Phase 5.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what they end up doing. Maybe the route to take with Eternals isn't to make, like, like Eternals too, but to like take some of the elements of Eternals and put them into other properties. The way like you had Hulk in Thor Ragnarok instead of a Hulk movie. But that was a rights issue is why that happened. But but in the same sense, maybe that's the solution for Eternals, you know?
Yeah.
Or they're just gonna pretend it never happened, which seems to be the case.
Yeah, it seems to be, exactly. It seems to be a case. Eternals, what? I don't remember making that movie. You're making shit up. Yeah.
Now we're gonna go to the last movie or the last thing in C tier, which is Hawkeye.
Hawkeye, very fun show.
I think I like Hawkeye more in retrospect than I did when I was watching. I think it was hard to grasp the tone when the show was on, you know? Like, it kind of just kept skipping back and forth between like really ridiculous and kind of like heartfelt and it had these different sides to it and it just kind of randomly flipped around. So it was really hard to get a grasp of the tone of that show when I first watched it. And I think looking back on it, I'm a bit more fond of it than I was before.
Same. I agree. I think it's a fun show. It doesn't take itself too seriously. That's to its strength. It's not trying to be like a pivotal moment in the MCU or anything. Again, it's got great leads. Haley Steinfeld and Jeremy Renner are great together in this.
Yelena being in it was great.
Yelena was great. The one big disappointment was Kingpin and how they handled him.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, I had fun with Hawkeye.
I think it's still C tier.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's a much higher place in C tier than I originally would have put it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, it's not great or anything, but in my opinion, it's one of the better Disney Plus shows they put out.
Alright, and we're moving on to D tier, or meh.
Yeah, meh.
The first movie in D tier, to me, is the worst MCU movie.
Okay.
But we kind of disagreed on it a little bit, and that's The Incredible Hulk, the Edward Norton one. Just did nothing for me.
I barely remember anything about this movie. I'm going to be honest. I don't remember what happened in this movie other than Edward Norton gets irradiated, obviously. Stan Lee drinks an irradiated soda. I remember that part.
They retouched, like, the key
Abomination
things that happened.
The leader, apparently, was also in it.
Yeah. Well, the leader was, like, created, but not, like, it was pre-leader character before that, and then his head started growing because of the chemicals.
And then
that was the last we saw
mentioned again.
He's gonna be in something again, isn't he? Like,
the rumor was that he was going to be in She-Hulk, but then that never happened.
No, he's supposed to be in something else. Like, he's supposed to be like, I think he's supposed to be in Captain America 4.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did read that. That would be insane. But yeah.
Yeah, and then they did bring back Abomination in a much more comic accurate way.
Yes.
And a much more fun character. But I would put Incredible Hulk lower. I think it's a mess of a movie. I think it wasn't fun at all. I think it was kind of boring and to me, the thing with The Incredible Hulk is that after The Incredible Hulk, my thought was the perfect way to do the Hulk is in a movie like Avengers as like part of a cast, and that a solo Hulk movie just would not make sense. And that's because the Hulk movie was so bad that it got me to the point of thinking it's just too one-dimensional. Like, it's not even two-dimensional, it's one-dimensional. With the Hulk just being kind of like, oh, it's Banner and he's scared of the Hulk taking over, and now Hulk, and he just smashes stuff, and that's all there is to it. And that makes sense as like a force of nature in a movie like The Avengers, but like in a solo movie, it's just kind of boring.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think Mark Ruffalo brought a lot more to Hulk that makes him more charismatic and interesting. Where like, if they had the rights to do it, which I think they do now, but I don't know.
No, they don't.
They still don't?
No, they still don't. There was speculation. I did see an article, but it's pure speculation that the contract for Hulu's coming up, or Comcast has to decide whether they want to either keep their share or buy out Disney's share or just drop out of it entirely. And there was speculation by an analyst that Disney could trade the Hulk rights from Comcast, who also owns Universal, in exchange for their Hulu shares. But that was analysts speculating on what Disney might do.
Yeah, they already kind of have a loophole. They can't do a solo Hulk movie, but they can put Hulk in any of their other movies. And
yeah, so if they get those solo movie rights away from Comcast Universal, then they could do that.
Yeah, but they don't really need to, because they can already put Hulk in other things, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
They already kind of found a way around that. But I would put Incredible Hulk lower. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I don't have any real attachment to that movie. I'm going to be honest. Like I said, I almost completely forgot what even happened to that movie. The Hulk fought the Abomination. That's what happened.
Alright, so I'm going to move that down to F tier. So next movie we have in D tier is Iron Man 2. I think this kind of personifies D tier.
Hey,
like, it's just kind of dull. It's got good parts, it's got bad parts, but it's just kind of mostly dull.
Yeah, it's funny. I like Iron Man 2 more than, like, most people even at the time did. Like, I remember when, like, the critics were, like, really shitting on it. I mean, I like the villain, Whiplash. It gave us Don Cheadle, gave us War Machine, it gave us Black Widow for the first time. It's a lot of good stuff happening in there. But yeah, it was a downgrade from the original movie, and I will agree with that.
Did you want to push it up, or are you
here's
happy
the thing,
with
like, I actually don't think it's as bad as Iron Man 3, and that's higher, but
I'm willing to push it up if you want to put it up to C tier.
Yeah, let's push that up to C tier.
And then we have the last movie in D tier, which is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yes. It's funny how empty D tier got.
Yeah, I'd be fine with Ant-Man and the Wasp in C tier or D tier. I think, to me, it would be all the same. Like, there isn't much of a difference, in my opinion, for that movie.
Leave that in D tier. It's fine.
Yeah. Now we're going on to F tier, the failure tier. We already
went on about the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah. Next up we have Thor 2, The Dark World. This is the other one. When we talk about movies that have become better in retrospect because of events in other movies, Thor 2 is like an example of that, where like the death of Thor's mother has become more relevant because of like Endgame, you know?
Yeah. Well, because of Taika Waititi and, the Endgame writers and stuff, like actually making it relevant and having the gravitas for Thor's character that's supposed to have.
Yeah. Like they retroactively made the movie better without changing the movie based on other things that happen in the MCU. This is, like I said, the only other movie that did that, I think, was Age of Ultron. And then some other movies have done that kind of in reverse, oddly enough. But Thor 2, I'd be happy with Thor 2 in either D or F. And we have it in F right now. What do you think?
Yeah, F.
Okay, next up, I know this is probably your most hated of the...
Well, it's the worst movie of the MCU. I'm going to say that right now. We went over this the last time we did this, but Black Widow is just a mess. Like, it feels completely unnecessary. Like, I get, like, we wanted a Natasha movie, Black Widow solo movie, since, like, the character was introduced. I totally 100% agree that she deserved her own movie. She deserved a better movie than this ended up being. It's just a mess. Like, the villain is, like, such a boring, like, James Bond style mustache twirly villain. And then you got, like, Taskmaster, who should be awesome, but then they made Taskmaster, like, a mute, like, mind-controlled, like, woman for some reason. They did the
X-Men Origins Wolverine treatment.
Yeah, they did they Deadpool Taskmaster. Why? What the hell? That turned, like, potentially one of the best villains into, like, a nothing character, because Taskmaster wasn't a character. She was mind-controlled, so she had, like, no personality of her own, no motivations of her own for the entire movie. It was just basically like a robot. That bugs the shit out of me to this day.
I will say, in the movie's defense, it does do two things incredibly well, and that is Yelena and Red Guardian.
Yes, Yelena.
I absolutely love those characters. Those would be the only reasons I would push it above F tier.
Yes,
but
Yelena
I'm not gonna
was
fight
like
for it.
the best thing this movie did for the MCU.
Yeah, and Red Guardian, we need
Guardian,
to see more of.
Yes, we will. He's going to be in Thunderbolts.
Yes, definitely. I'm excited about his return.
Yes.
But that's it. Those are the only, like, really good aspects of the movie.
Yeah, and then there's also another issue where, like, they made this movie after they killed off Black Widow in the MCU, so they had to find a place in the past to, like, shoehorn the story into. And I don't think it worked that well, because this happens during Civil War somehow. It's just dumb. It barely references, like, the events or what's happening during that period of time.
So here's what they could have done that would have been clever, but it would have required Scarlett Johansson to want to continue in the MCU.
Right.
But what would have been clever is if they set it up like it was something that took place in the past, but we didn't quite know where it was placed in the past.
Yeah.
And then they just progressively started having things that contradicted the MCU. Like, as it went on, like, what's going on? Like, this is off, and stuff. And then the movie ends because Phase 4 is when multiverse stuff stuff started happening.
Oh,
the movie
I thought you were
ends
going
with
the
something
multiverse.
happening that pulls her through the multiverse or something.
Oh,
and that
yeah.
would have been like that would have been a cool trick.
That would be a cool twist, yeah.
Because you'd be like, when is this even taking place as you're watching it? Like, you wouldn't know. And then as you're watching, you're like, wait a minute, Hawkeye's dead? But Hawkeye's, what the fuck? What's going on? Like, then you just have these other things start happening and you can really fuck with it. And people are going to be confused. And then the way it would end doing that would be a clever way to do it. But I think Scarlett Johansson was going with the MCU, so they couldn't do something like that. She just wanted her one-off movie and that was it. Lastly, in F tier, we have What If. And the only thing that gives me pause about What If being an F tier is that it had one episode that I would totally put in S tier.
Okay, yes, but one great episode.
I know. Like I said, I'm still happy. I'm fine with it. It's
not
being
enough to redeem it. It was my most disappointing.
Yeah.
I love What If as a comic series. I love it as a concept. I love exploring the multiverse and doing in stories like this, but it ended up being so bad.
Yeah.
It's yeah. It's,
I'm not gonna fight it. I think it belongs in F tier. It just makes me sad that it had that one episode that doesn't belong in F tier at all. But it's only one episode,
Right, yeah, I agree.
And that's it for our old tier list and our adjustments we're making there. Now we're gonna move on to the few things that we're adding in. First up, we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I'm gonna start off and say, I think that's an A tier.
Yes, I really enjoyed the movie. I know, it's not as universally beloved, but I think we could both agree. I can agree that it's better than the first film.
Yeah. Got a lot more style. Sam Raimi's, of course, is great. And, Scarlet Witch does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yes.
And makes it just a really entertaining and heartfelt movie. Next up, we have Ms. Marvel, which, man, there's so much I like about Ms. Marvel, and there's so much I absolutely loathe about Ms. Marvel.
I think it's a solid C tier for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I love everything that has nothing to do with Marvel that's in Ms. Marvel, I love. And everything that's trying to fit into the MCU, I think fails.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Yes, I agree. I think the character Ms. Marvel, I think she's great. I loved, the stuff, when it was, her and her family. Her family's great.
The partition story stuff,
Yeah, everything trying to be a superhero show failed miserably.
Yeah, really miserably.
Yes.
It's so crazy, because, if I was just placing this based on quality.
I hated the goofy-ass damage control agents.
Yeah.
Also, the main villains were just, nothing. They were boring, too. It just utterly failed as a superhero show. But as, a slice-of-life, sitcom about this family, it succeeds.
Yeah. That's the sad thing about this, because if this wasn't Marvel, if this was just, its own series or something, I think, I don't know if we would have even watched it.
Nah, yeah, probably not.
But if we had watched it, it would have been this is a really good show. This is really entertaining and good. But this is one of the cases where the MCU stuff is actually what drags it down.
Yes.
And it just didn't work at all. And I think it could have worked. It's just a matter of they just didn't do it right. They didn't do the Marvel aspect stuff right. I think this would have been good maybe if they had, is it John Watts who did the Spider-Man movies? If he was tied to this.
I think John Watts.
He would have nailed the tone.
Yeah.
If he was not necessarily running it, but if he was involved,
because there's a lot of similarities here to Spider-Man, you've got an average teenager gifted miraculous powers and trying to navigate having a normal life while being a superhero. I mean, that's Spider-Man's story. We saw how John Watts handled that material. Yeah, but I mean, you can speculate all day long on that. It is what it is. Hopefully, when they do season 2 or something, we get stronger material.
Yeah, let's move on. Here's a movie that I imagine you're going to want to put in F tier. And that is Thor Love and Thunder.
No, that's not F tier. What? Come on.
Oh, you reacted very badly to it.
I did not react very badly. I said I had issues with it, but I didn't hate it.
Okay. Well, I'm pleasantly surprised. Where would you place Thor Love and Thunder?
Probably either B tier or high C tier.
Okay, so you'd place it above the original Thor.
Well, yes, I would.
I don't know, now I'm gonna downgrade it. I think C tier is good. I don't think it's as good as, say, for example, Spider-Man Far From Home, or Iron Man, or Moon Knight.
Yeah, okay.
You okay with it in C tier, or are you gonna fight for a B tier?
No, I'm okay with within C tier. Not gonna fight, but here's the thing. Like, it's a romantic comedy. They're trying something new. You gotta give them credit for that. You gotta give them credit for that. And I like Natalie Portman. I like her version of Thor. It was fun. The movie has like a lot of fun moments. Like I said when we did our podcast, my chief complaints were I think it went too hard into comedy while still trying to have like these emotional beats, and I don't think it worked. I thought like the Guardian stuff at the beginning was kind of unnecessary. It was just a cameo.
I thought they were going to be more involved, and that kind of was disappointing.
That was kind of disappointing. I mean, but other than that, it's a solid movie.
Yeah, I agree. I actually really liked the movie, but I recognized it had lots of problems. So I'm happy with it in C tier. I think it kind of fits in with Thor and Iron Man 3. Like, it kind of fits in there.
Yeah, it fits into that bracket, yeah.
Okay, so this one I'm even more confident that you hated, so tell me if I'm wrong here. I think you're gonna immediately want this an F, and that's She-Hulk.
F.
When we were covering this, I liked it, and you hated it.
I do. I hate this. It just hit all the wrong buttons with me. Like, okay, now listen, I know I said this a lot this podcast. I love the lead. I love Tatiana Maslany as Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk. She is fantastic. She is the one thing this show gets right. And then show completely drops the ball on everything else. Because
it's funny because it's probably the most comic accurate thing in the entire MCU as far as the She-Hulk comics go.
That just tells me that I was right in not reading those comics. It's just like, okay, we get it. It's a comedy, but you gotta make everybody around Jennifer so dopey and stupid, because whenever subplots shift these people, you don't give a shit. There's nothing to give a shit about. It's like you just want the show to go back to being about Jennifer immediately.
See, to me, this is C tier because I actually enjoyed a lot of the meta comedy in it. I really liked Jennifer Walters' character. I liked the introductory episode with Hulk and her relationship, and
yes, I like that.
I liked the Daredevil stuff in it.
Yes, the Daredevil stuff was good.
And I liked Abomination and the way he was in it. And I
didn't like how there was no good plot throughout the series. I didn't like how it ended in the last episode where it was just some big meta joke where she talks to like a robot Kevin Feige, and then all of a sudden Hulk has a son. I didn't like that. I thought it was lazy.
It was a bad way to introduce Hulk's son because that's too big of a plot point to throw in. I think it needed less of a big through storyline. I think this should have just been a weekly episodic comedy.
I hated how Titania was like such a joke of a character.
Yeah, they failed Titania.
Yes, they did.
But like, to me, when you say like that it didn't have enough of a through line and stuff, I'm like, I think it needed less of a through line.
But the through line there just sucked. I agree with you. Either not have it or do something better that has more.
It should have just been straight up episodic.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Episode of the week each week, completely with stuff. Like, you have Wong showing up and you have these Abominations showing up and you have this stuff happening, but there's no through line to it. Like, that would have been better. Like I said, to me, this is totally C tier. To you, this is like the bottom of F tier. Would you compromise on D tier?
I will compromise on D tier.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say it was bottom of F tier. That's what if.
Oh, okay. So you liked it more than what if.
It was actually extremely disappointing. So.
Okay, now, we said that there was nothing that was going to go in S tier here. If there's one thing I'd put in S tier, it would be this.
Werewolf by Night was really fun.
It was so good, and it was good for what it was.
Yes.
Because it didn't need to be something huge. It was perfect for what it was.
I don't know if it's S tier necessarily, but it's definitely A tier. Like, if I know for a fact, like, it's somewhere, it's like we can debate about S tier, but it's at least A tier, in my opinion. Because, like, it delivered. I was surprised. I gotta tell you that. Like,
I think the reason I'd put it S tier is that, to me, S tier doesn't necessarily necessitate that it's like a huge thing and a big deal. Expectations for what this is. It's a holiday special. It's a Halloween special. Place it at like a lower bar of what it needs to achieve. Yeah, and I think it obliterated the bar. Like, it didn't just surpass it. It went way beyond what I expected.
I gotta tell you, like, I didn't have expectations going into it.
Yeah.
Most of like the Disney Plus stuff has been bad to mediocre. Like most of it doesn't even get beyond C tier on our list here. So it's like I didn't have expectations, and it blew those expectations away. It was a love letter to classic Universal horror films, and they nail it.
Yeah. I'd be okay with A tier, though, if that's what you think it should place at.
Yeah, let's put it in A tier.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. I thought it was sweet. I thought it was good. It wasn't going for something as good as like Royal Finite. It was going for like something almost intentionally bad but sweet.
It was going, yes, it was going for like one of those corny like franchise holiday specials, and it does it earnestly. It does it with its heart on its sleeve, which is, you know, that's a strength James Gunn has, like where he can do these things and make them work. He has incredible sensibility for this stuff. But for me, it was fun.
I couldn't place it above B tier.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's B tier.
Yeah, I couldn't convince myself to place it above B tier. Hold on, I did that wrong.
Yeah, it's definitely B tier in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good place for it. It's really good for what it's trying to be, but what it's trying to be is something that's actually kind of bad. So it's kind of like, how do you place that? It makes it kind of tricky. But I think that's a good place. And lastly, we have Black Panda, Wakanda Forever.
Black Panda.
Or Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I don't know how I said that wrong. But I'd say this is definitely better than Black Panther.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And you know, the reason why is because it's less formulaic. It doesn't follow the formula.
Yeah. I'd say it's definitely better.
Yeah, and like I said, Black Panther didn't take the big swings. This does take the big swings. Yeah. This does, and most of it is out of necessity because they lost their star, sadly, and so the whole movie had to be rewritten around that. Mm-hmm. But what it does, like, it does with aplomb.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't place it S tier.
No.
And I would, to me, it falls somewhere between A and B. I'd be happy with it in either A or B.
I think I would put it in B tier just because I still think it has its faults. Ironheart doesn't really work in the movie. She just seems to be there to, like, set up her show.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue I think I had with the movie is Ironheart just feels like a Perlmutter move to have her in it.
Yeah.
It feels like forced in a way
it's very obvious that, like, that we're setting this character up for her own thing because, like, she doesn't really do much in this movie. Mm-hmm. You know, she doesn't seem to be critical to, like, the plot in any way. And really, like, the movie is Shuri's story anyway. It's Shuri's journey, which they do a fantastic job with. Or Shuri. I'm going to say, like, it's a better movie than the original Black Panther. It's also one of the most epic films of Phase 4.
Yeah.
I think it's, like, what Eternals wanted to be in terms of scope, but, like, it actually delivers on it in a more satisfying way.
Yeah. So that closes out our tier time. Just to recap over it very quickly, we won't discuss them, but I'm just going to go through our tier list right now. S tier, which is Masterpiece, Captain America the Winter Soldier, and Avengers Infinity War. A tier, which is great, Captain America the First Avenger, The Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America Civil War, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Endgame, WandaVision, Loki Season 1, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Spider-Man No Way Home, Spider-Man Homecoming, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and Werewolf by Night. B tier, Moon Knight, Iron Man, Avengers Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man Far From Home, The Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. C tier, which is average, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Thor, Iron Man 3, Eternals, Hawkeye, Iron Man 2, Ms. Marvel, and Thor Love and Thunder. D tier, which is meh, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and She-Hulk. F tier, which is failure, The Incredible Hulk, Thor 2, Black Widow, and What If Season 1.
Yes. Okay.
There we have it. That is our tier list, and that is the end of our show. So next week, we are going to be returning to The Last of Us for the final 2 episodes of the series. So stick around for that next week. Thank you everybody for listening. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. You can follow us on Facebook. You can go to our website, thetotalscreen.com, open up the container stories and get links to everything, including our SoundCloud page, everything else there. You can subscribe to this podcast on your podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcast or Pocket Cast, and the the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel, which you can find the links to within a container story on our website, thetotoscreen.com. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotoscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.